There you go. Well, nice to see you. It's interesting. We're going to be talking about some swindlers and con artists, et cetera, et cetera. And the funny thing is, I feel like Google is always listening because I just got a video recommendation on YouTube of an interview with none other than Anna from Inventing Anna, the Netflix show. And it was actually an interview with her. I think it was 60 minutes. It was 8 months ago in between her jail terms. And I think even on the report itself, they said that shortly after the interview, she was deported or was about to be deported, ended up going to jail because she's going back to, her royal family in Germany or Russia or whatnot. It's interesting. So I came across Anna Delvey's story, and a long time ago, I read the article, and I thought it was just sort of fascinating that there is this woman who's this con artist, and there's different interpretations of her. But what was interesting to me about her is that the victims of her cons, the people she was conning, were already kind of in high society or wanting to be in high society and sort of susceptible to the glamour of it. And I was so inspired by it that I actually tried to write a musical about it. And then I found out that the rights were gone. But my character in my musical would have been a lot nicer. And, she was showing the hypocrisy of the wealthy elite.
Mm-hmm.
However, this Anna, which we'll talk about, she's a little bit different. I don't know if she's really cares about I think she sees the hypocrisy, but I think she's just more sees it as an opportunity to take advantage of people. What do you think?
Yeah, I see it more of like, they have pieces of the pie. Why can't I? I should have a piece of the pie. I'm entitled to a piece of the pie. They're not so great. I'm better than them. So I'm going to have my piece of the pie. I think it's that simple.
It's interesting because we people obviously have this fascination in culture with these people. There's, we're going to be talking about two shows. Both happen to be in Netflix because clearly Netflix is obsessed with con artists, but one is the Tinder Swindler and the other one is Inventing Anna. And both have gotten great ratings. I mean, when the articles came up, they were huge. They were huge hits for both. I was going to say characters, but both people who are characters, and there were all these bidding rights, and the Netflix, the Tinder Swindler one is a documentary, whereas the Inventing Anna is a fictional account, but both have really done very well. Everybody's talking about it. Why do you think, in the first place, we're so obsessed with con artists?
That's a good question. Why are we obsessed with con artists? I think you're getting a glimpse into someone who doesn't give a shit and takes risks and and the consequences and how they live with it. And they kind of deflect like all responsibility. They take zero ownership. And on a level, I think that's alluring for all of us to just be able to live a life without having to take responsibility and care and just get what we want and just, capitalize on other people's good faith. I think there's that bit. And also look, this is what happens to other people, but that would never happen to me. And, you might feel a little good about yourself and your good judgment by watching something like that and the victims of these swindlers and con artists. I don't think people would admit that one as much, but I get a sense, when I watch it, I'm just like, wow. But I can also understand how they didn't see it coming, how they got, groomed. So it's fascinating to hear about a process like in the Tinder Swindler of how things started and how they progressed. And with Anna, you don't really get that to the same degree, but you're kind of in awe that she keeps getting away with things. And like, how do people not know this, and why are they believing her? It's like, why are people just taking her at face value? It's just so, wow.
Well, I
Yeah.
found it kind of interesting because I thought she'd be this charismatic person, and watching the TV show, I didn't find that I liked her too much, even though I really like the actress who plays her. But in real life, she's even less likable, and yet
Yeah.
he managed. And it's the same thing with the Tinder swindler. I found him completely unlikable, and yet both were able to really draw people in. And I did find myself, when I was watching the Tinder swindler, I think I was more harsh in my judgment of the people he took advantage of, because I felt like there was some complicity there with the women, because I felt like they really were looking for that fantasy, and they really bought into that. And there's a level of, did they really, I mean, I think once the buy-in happens, it's a lot harder to get out and sort of escape your belief that you formed about that person, even when presented with evidence. But in the beginning stages, it felt like that's something that they really wanted to believe.
Yeah. So if we're talking about the Tinder swindler, I mean, you just described some of the steps of the, narcissism playbook. And, it starts off with that person constructing this illusion about themselves, that they buy into themselves, or not. They know they're being deceptive. My sense from him and watching him, he believes the story, and that his resources are other people. His banks are other people. His employment is being, this awesome person that he believes himself to be, and deserving and worthy of having his expenses covered, so that he can continue to be this like amazing person. So you construct this illusion. He did it on Tinder, and there'll be a target market for that kind of story, that marketing of self, of identity. And he's just recruiting the ones who seem to be taken by that or interested in that. And when he's with them, he continues to reinforce this narrative that is their fantasy, and kind of tests out if, they're buying into this fantasy. And then he doesn't give them much time to really think about things, because he's too busy love bombing and making them feel amazing and special. And he's this big time guy, and wow, this big time guy is making me feel special, because they feel insignificant on some level and need this savior, this knight in shining armor, to make them feel complete and whole and valuable and important and all those things. So of course that's sometimes sufficient to just hook somebody in, but he's the one in control the whole time. He dictates the narrative of what's happening, what he needs, what he's doing for them. And they're liking it because they're getting attention that they've been needing for a while in that form that seems pleasant. So why would they question anything?
It's interesting that you say, you speak of this fantasy that they buy into, that they seem to love on a certain level. And I noticed that even when the fantasy sort of part turns negative, there is still that fantasy. There's this rush of like, oh my God, these terrible things are happening, but they're also dramatic and exciting and movie-like. And I think there's something that people really love about that too, the drama of it all.
Well, I think what we're watching on Netflix playing out between Tinder swindler and these women is what Netflix is doing to us. So they're creating a story in a way that gets us to form like some sort of bond with the characters. We don't have to like them, but we have to feel interested in this whole story, the saga. And then, there's nothing dramatic happening at first. It's all love and wonderful. But you could see as the viewer, this isn't going to go well. And over time, you get the drama, but you're already hooked, because, this is addiction. It's an emotional addiction. You get addicted to this excitement, this unpredictability, the surprise factor, whether it's a pleasurable one or a dramatic, like negative one. It's still the same dopamine hit that we have come to, want and need.
Right.
So it just creates this bond that then sets up a pattern of how we are going to have to respond or react to what is being presented to us, or what Simon is presenting to these women and the other people he took advantage of.
Well, you mentioned that Simon, for example, you think that he sort of believes his own story. I mean, he knows he's lying, but he still sort of believes in it. And it's the same thing. I get the same sense very much from Anna, who's to this day sort of denies swindling anybody, and just the way she talks about things. I was listening to I think it was a psychologist sort of commenting about it, in terms of what it takes to be a con artist on that level, where you're really she said that you're kind of like a spy, but you're spying for yourself. You're not doing it for any other reason but yourself, but you have to suppress your identity. And if you're doing that 24/7, and in many cases that's how they're spending a lot of time with these people, their own self, I imagine, gets completely suppressed in favor of this character. So they do start believing and sort of telling themselves stories. So how much of it do you think they believe, and how much do they suppress, and how much of themselves sort of stays there?
Well, that's a bigger question that makes me think about trauma and what happens when we experience this at various stages of our life. In order to, it's like your world, as you've known it, has become obliterated. So you have to create an identity to be able to operate in this new world while protecting yourself from the pain that you experience with that trauma. So if you decide, and it often happens before we are conscious of what we're doing, and some people do it consciously. Again, depends on the person and their circumstances. But what I imagine we're trying to do is trying to figure out a way to succeed in this world, because we've learned that if you do it the old way, if I'm that person that I was before, I'm going to get screwed over again. So I need to create something that is going to protect me from future pain, and I need to emulate those that I've idealized as the successful ones, and then I'm going to try to get in and belong. And I've heard this before. The way you belong is to believe that you belong. You act like that you're part of it already, and you convince the people that you are just like them. And so with Anna's case, she was this sort of aloof, mysterious, that she doesn't say too much about herself. She lets people use their imagination. But she gives enough of a story to get them thinking that she might be one of them. But her laissez-faire, I don't give a shit kind of attitude makes it seem like she sees herself as more important than anyone else. And for many people, that's intriguing. They want to get to know her better. They think that actually she is powerful. That is powerful, and I need to be in closer proximity to that. And I think that's how it happens.
I can't help but notice that there is this commonality between both, the characters, Simon and Anna, but also the people that surround them. They seem to have a very similar desire, which is, I think, for them, it's to be special in some way. I think that is the driving force for both Anna and Simon. I mean, if Simon just wanted wealth, he wouldn't live this luxury lifestyle of like spending money. And same with Anna. I mean, I know she wants to build a business, but she spends money on clothes. She has this she wants to be this mysterious, enigmatic. And I don't think it's just because she wants things. I think that is also part of what she wants. It's that people to think that she's special, for her to then believe that she's special. And the people that surround Anna are also people who, especially because she has relationships with people who are not as wealthy as her, and she seems to like having them around because they can sort of look up to her. But for them, I think the appeal of Anna, especially seeing her personality, she's not like a charming, lovely, warm person. So it has to be about the sense of, I'm in this inner circle of this woman who is, some special royalty. And I think with Simon, it's the same thing. Oh, I have this like mysterious. So in both cases, and in both the con artists and the connies, it's about that feeling special aspect. At least that's how it comes across to me.
Well, what you're talking about is narcissism, need for importance, feeling special, that they matter, superior. entitled to whatever it is that they want and need that continues to keep them in the life that they've constructed for themselves. And everyone else is a resource for that. So Simon, the difference between those two, Simon had a team of people who, was working with him that enabled him to, do the things that he was doing, where it seemed like with Anna, she operated alone. But like what you said, they surround themselves with people who are dependent on that person's success, for them to have this perception of success or their potential of success.
Well, since you're a narcissism hacker, I guess, can you be a con artist and not be a narcissist?
Oh, no, I don't see. That's, yeah, like there might be an example where you can't, where you switch that on and you know how to switch it off and come back into your humanity. And you believe you're doing it for some sort of greater good. So I think of assassin spies, there's some kind of bigger picture thing going on. Not to say the bigger picture thing is so ethical and wonderful that we should be fighting for it, but they might believe, and that's, what they've invested their profession into, their way of being. And then if they know how to switch it off, then, and come back into themselves and not need to con people, then, and they're clear about those two different like personas to be able, yeah. But I think con artists, you have to activate or leverage those narcissistic traits to be able to, do people into what you need them to do for you.
Well, empathy is something that I think would very much stand in the way of that. I think somebody like Anna probably to a large extent had convinced herself that there is no victim in her crimes. I don't think Simon has done the same. I think he just doesn't care. I don't think Anna is quite the same. I think I've had somebody like that in my life, so I feel like I can kind of recognize that, where there's a low level of storytelling to self that makes you, and the way she sort of answers the interviews, the questions, makes me think that she genuinely does believe, convinced herself that there is no victims, and if they are victims, they deserve it because maybe they're greedy. I think it's that way of thinking. Versus I don't think with Simon it really matters at all to him, so he doesn't have to even try to convince himself of that narrative.
I'm with you. I remember a quote from the interview I saw with Anna Delvey, and she said, "I can do what I want." So it's like, I can do what I want, and I am not accountable. I'm not responsible for how others experience me as I do what I want. That's their problem if they've been hurt by it. It's their problem that they're stupid. There's this narrative with her about people being stupid, and they don't deserve their money if they're, why should they have it if they're so stupid? So there's a value. She's placing value on some things. It could be wealth. It could be this illusion of wealth or power. And anyone else who doesn't, who has fallen for her stuff, even though she would never admit she's done anything wrong, it's their fault. So it's like a victim shaming, blaming.
Well, I think it's the level of dehumanization that she has to do in order not to feel bad about it. And again, I think for her, it feels like she has to work at that a little bit more. I think it's more it's natural to her at this point, but I think she probably starting off that she had to tell herself that story. But it's interesting because often somebody like her, you would think would have a moment like an aha, and she never did have that moment.
Not the way she's portrayed in the Netflix the docu or series. That's the thing. Once you shut that down, you can't get it back very easily until you've had a situation where you actually feel remorse. You allow your feeling of shame to actually lead you into remorse, that you think, oh wow, I actually hurt someone, and I'm feeling like I violated my moral code. But it seems with her, Simon, that's been shut down completely. So they can't even access it because they're really about their needs. It is a pure survival mode based on, what they consider success, and nothing's going to stop them. It's just unquenchable. That's the thing. It's an addiction. You can't stop it without being stopped, and then having this opportunity to be deprived of everything, where you go through withdrawal, and then maybe you have the opportunity to be honest with yourself, to confront yourself. But I don't know. I don't know if it's possible for those two. I don't know.
It does make me think a little bit of what you said earlier in the conversation, that there is something that we as an audience embrace about somebody who just doesn't care. She's going to do what she's going to do, and she doesn't care. And I think, we see that in sort of the success and not just the interest in the show, but also just sort of an acceptance of her, that it's because I think socially there's more of that with her than somebody like Simon. I think Simon, there's much more of, okay, negative. I wouldn't want to ever cross paths with him. But with Anna, it's like, it's kind of, people are fascinated, a little bit interested, maybe I think she can get an endorsement deal.
Well, seems a hell of a lot more intelligent about how she did things compared to Simon. He's just using the same old story. And because he didn't just swindle women, he swindled families in Israel and all over the place. I think tried with a charity based in the US, a Jewish charity. So yeah. But with Anna, I think what she did was she penetrated into such an elite group of people who are so, closed off, and she managed to get in there. I think that's the most fascinating aspect of her whole story. And she had nothing. Like, she just had an illusion that people believed, and she managed to, get to the top of the financial sector in New York. I mean, wow.
Well, it's amazing because I've been around people of that nature a little bit, and it's hard not to feel like an outsider. There's a way of talking, about the daycares that your kids are on waiting lists for when they're just, still in the stummy, that costs, $50,000-$100,000 a year. There is this way of talking about designer items, where they can never be a blatant designer. It's like a designer that other very wealthy people will know, but it's this subtle thing. And just a certain attitude. And it isn't that easy to fit in if you're not part of that, if you didn't grow up in that. And yet she is able to do that for some reason, even though she's really we don't know her whole history, but it sounds like she's kind of a middle class, born in Russia, grew up in Germany, which she hates more than anything, apparently. So, how do you think she's able to mimic it so well? Is she even mimicking? Like, what is she doing, do you think, to get to that? Because I feel like people were even looking up to her, like she was setting the tone as opposed to following.
I think it's interesting. I think all of us are capable of these things if we want it bad enough, because we all have these parts in us that we can choose to like pick up and amplify and make that our identity. And from the way she's portrayed in the series, she was, studying fashion magazines. She was studying, that culture. And then she started working in that culture for a bit. So she got a taster of what it's like in there, to see if her fantasy or her construct of it matched the reality. And she would have made some adjustments so that when she made her splash in New York, she came there ready for action. And rather than being the more grandiose, obvious, she was more subdued, restrained, and allows people imagination to take over. But like I said, she made it so that she actually belonged. She made herself appear like she was already part of that group. She's already accepted within that group. That's been her upbringing. That's, intergenerational wealth. So she embodied that as her truth, and people believed it. So she doesn't have a magnetic personality, but there's something about her aloofness and mysteriousness. I don't give a shit about you, that made people think that she's actually really special and important. And again, it's their imagination, it's their perception, it's all that. She didn't do any of it. She didn't engineer any of it. They did. And she just, didn't stop it, didn't correct them. That's what she wanted. And maybe she learned that somewhere, like with the supermodel kind of, I don't get, whatever the supermodel, I don't know, construct is.
Mystery does draw people in. It's interesting. They like to attribute things. I mean, as you know, my Twitter handle, Mysterious Cat. It came about because people would think that I'm mysterious, and they would constantly ask me if I was a spy, and I would say, well, if you think I'm a spy, obviously I wouldn't be a very good one. And they'd say, well, that's exactly what a spy would say. But I think the only reason that people thought that of me was just I'm private. So I have a tendency probably to not give off a lot of information. And I think that does cause people to sort of build a narrative. And when you see it being built, it's kind of curious to observe. And sometimes you do want to play into it because it's sort of fun. And at a certain point, you don't want to mess with people's interesting fantasies and versions of you, because it seems to give them some sort of a reward. Like it seems exciting for them to think these things.
Yeah, it gives them life. But it's like what you said, how you responded to that question. Whether or not you were a spy, you didn't give a yes or no answer. You gave a, deflection, which is Anna's, that's her way. She just answers a question with another question, but almost questioning why you asked that question of her. If it was apparent, you wouldn't need to ask it. So she never has to answer anything. So it forces people to have to use their imaginations, because they're not going to get a straight answer from her. Even in that interview, no one got a straight answer from her except for I can do what I want, which said it all.
Maybe we all have a little bit of Anna in us, and maybe that's why.
Yeah. It's like that.
I wonder if somebody like Anna and Simon who build these like virtual worlds around them, who don't really have, Simon has maybe a little bit of an inner circle who does know who the heck he is, but Anna does not. Do you think, even with their sort of narcissistic personalities, do you think they feel lonely?
I think everything they're doing is to avoid feeling lonely. You get the sense that Anna spent a lot of time on her own, but she was spending time kind of scheming and planning and, not sitting in self-reflection about her, the consequences of her behavior and how she was going to, do something beneficial for humanity. That wasn't happening. It's just the next fix. We need the next fix, because I can't stand this feeling of shame of how empty I feel, of how I am nothing, I don't matter. And so I need to do everything to make sure that I matter, that I get that message reflected back at me. So maybe at some point I'm going to believe it, but I don't believe it yet. So I have to keep doing these things. Really seems like an addiction, doesn't it?
Well, there was a very interesting answer that she gave in the 60 Minutes interview where, I think she was asked about being in jail, and she just said, I don't regret it. I would not give that back, because, I wouldn't have had this experience. And then she sort of noted, well, I'm writing a book about it. Again, it seems like everything that she does is to reinforce the feeling of being special. And even if she's being considered a con artist, which I don't think she likes that, so she doesn't accept that, she doesn't embrace that, because she could have just said, I'm an excellent con artist, and that could have been her identity. So somehow she doesn't want to do that, but she does like that she has that fame and attention from the way she's been in court. That now basically this behavior is actually, when you think about it, is really reinforced by our society and rewarded, because she has, she's financially benefited from this Netflix show. Fame wise, I think, is even more important to her. For Simon, I suspect he's not as keen on the publicity. I don't know if that's your view. Although
I
he
think
does have an Instagram with lots of followers, so maybe
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And we're part of it. We're participants in this thing. Wouldn't it be easier for like, we know this exists in society. Yes, it's entertaining, but I'm kind of bored of it. Like, why do we need to keep seeing it? But what do? We offer these people Netflix series and book deals and, sponsorship. We are part of it. We're feeding it because they're doing something for us. And so this is exactly like the narcissistic system. You have this person at the center who's like the powerful one, and it's what they can do for everyone else. And even Anna knows that. Like you get that indication that she's very well aware of, if I benefit, you benefit. So what's your problem? The banks are getting, this person's getting publicity. She sees publicity as good publicity because fame is her value. But isn't sitting in, walking in the shoes of those who've actually had negative repercussions because of the fame. So I think that was a sense that also stood out during the series, that she believes that what she's doing, people should be thanking her because she's making their lives better. They're getting what they want. They're getting fame. They're getting access to things that they maybe didn't before her, that she deems valuable, but they may not.
Well, even the proximity of being, near Her Highness Anna. With Simon, do you think some of the women in particular who are watching the Tinder Swindler, do you think they're watching it, or do you think some women are watching it and going, oh, I recognize myself in these women, I should watch out for these signs? Or do you think they just do not recognize that?
It's an excellent question, because I think we would all hope that women who are in that position currently, they would watch it and go, oh my God, that's what's happening to me. I think unfortunately though, they won't. They'll look at these women and they'll go, oh, you're so stupid for falling for that. Oh my God, that would never happen to me. Meanwhile, they're trusting someone who has this textbook, of Simon. They can't see it because they've been groomed. They're still under that spell. They haven't gone through that part of the cycle. So I talk about 6 steps. So they're not at step 4, where the relationship takes a turn and it becomes dramatic. And I need you for this favor. I need you for a favor. I need you to do this for me. It's urgent. You're the only one I trust about this. So their savior is activated. And once that starts, it's a whole other cycle of getting drained. That's when all the resources start to get extracted by that person, whether it's money, whether it's time, energy, emotions, knowledge, doesn't matter. So they haven't gotten to that point. It's only when they start to get to that point where they are thinking is challenged, that something's not quite right here, only then can they go, oh. So I think if women are going through that point and are watching Tinder Swindler, that's when they might go, oh my goodness, this is what I'm going through right now. But it's not the love bombing grooming. They won't be able to. I just don't think people can see it when they're in it.
Mm. What are some of those things, grooming wise, to watch out for? Asking for a friend.
Yeah. So I talk about 6 steps, and so the second step. So the point is, one person wants to form an emotional bond with the other, and what will happen is that person's going to take advantage of that other person. But most of the time, that person who's taking advantage of the other person don't think that they're taking advantage of anyone. They think, well, we're friends, or we're partners, or this is what we do. They won't, because you have to have accountability, a sense of personal responsibility to even consider that you might be exploiting somebody else to meet your needs. So once an emotional bond is formed, then there's the 3 grooming strategies, which are focused attention. So all eyes on that person, making you feel special, significant, listening attentively, making it seem like they're really listening to you so that you really feel like you matter to them. And then they'll be opening up about about themselves. So you're getting a sense of their vulnerability and their emotional depth. So you're feeling, and they're kind of sensing, what are your values? And they're playing into that. So if they sense you like cats, then they'll be really interested in cats and start sharing information about cats. So they feed that, making you feel like, talking about cats wasn't the stupidest thing that you did. That was probably the smartest thing you did because they're really into it. Then the second bit is love bombing. So giving excessive gifts, compliments, again, attention, giving you secrets that they haven't told anyone. It might be, expensive possessions, invitations into exclusive gatherings with people who are, considered VIP, even sharing knowledge or wisdom that really resonates, that speaks to some part of you that you don't really share with other people. So they see right into you. So doing a lot of that within a short period of time. And then the third, and so kind of sweeps you away because you feel like, wow, they're lavishing me with all this stuff. I must be really special. And the third one is intimacy. So they create situations where it's just you one-on-one, where they can continually give you attention, love bomb you. And that's where they sort of test you out, your faith in what they're saying. And it's either, a one-on-one expensive restaurant or quiet little space together, or in a very exclusive place, like what we saw with Inventing Anna. There's all these exclusive gatherings of VIPs that, are quite exclusive. And you get into the inner circle. So you're feeling like you're belonging and you're part of it. So those are the three-part steps of the grooming process. And it repeats in a cycle.
Any sort of red flags that people should just watch out for immediately?
The red flag for ourselves is needing someone to make us matter. Needing someone to make you feel special and significant and liking it when they do. That's the red flag. If you're going, they just met me. Why are they saying all these great things and praising me? Yes, even though they've read things about me, they don't actually know me yet. But yet they're saying all these things about what they've heard, what they've read, what they expect. And so they've put me on a pedestal. That's a dangerous place for me to be, because where do we go from pedestal? We fall. And when we fall, we get hurt. So I don't really need to be on a pedestal. I can relate with you, this person, without needing to be elevated or diminished. Let's try to be on, equal footing level. Yeah.
I'm inherently very distrustful and not good at taking compliments. So I think I'm safe, relatively safe, or maybe that's how they get me. They being narcissists, not the government.
The government isn't.
But the government, I can't talk about the government, they're listening.
No.
But do you think are narcissists just born, or are they created by our society?
Well, we talk about narcissism, and we haven't kind of shared a definition of narcissism that that we've agreed on is the version we're talking about. But I don't believe anyone's born that way. We don't get born into some void and that's, out we pop and that's who we are. We're shaped by our experiences, and how relational, loving behaviors are modeled to us by our primary caregivers. So those who, were influential, who we were connected and bonded to in our very early days of life, those are the people who shape our values and beliefs about and our habits around relationships, good or bad. And they get reinforced through our different institutions as we go through school, and the way we're socialized, and the way we're expected to be socialized, the way we're expected to behave. We might be, primed for being exploited by people but not seeing those behaviors as red flags because they're so normal and familiar, because we experience them in our family of origin. So these are the things that influence and shape us, our parents, and what influenced them, the trauma they might be carrying from what they experienced before we were born, and our early experiences of adversity, trauma, and even good things. All those things kind of mold us, especially in those early years.
Okay, I have a very important question for you. I think you know what I'm gonna ask. Tell me the truth. Am I a narcissist?
Yeah. Catherine, we're all narcissists.
That's right. That's the breaking news today.
Yeah.
This big
Breaking news.
bombshell. Yeah, we're all narcissists. Well, it's true. We are all a little bit narcissists because I recognize it in myself. Sometimes I recognize it in my behavior and in my thought process. And sometimes I call myself out for it, you know. I go, Catherine, you're a little narcissistic right now. And that way I feel like because we are all susceptible to it, but we are able to recognize it, some of us anyways. I don't know if everyone can, but I think a lot of us can, if we're not too far gone, and we can sort of correct that a bit.
Yeah, we can. I think you have to be interested in the effect that you have on other people and care about the impact you have on other people. And it doesn't mean that you're constantly trying to please the other person. That's another type of survival or stress response, or the people pleasing, the fawning.
Yeah.
That's not good. I mean, it's not good if you don't want to be doing that as your, habit.
I'm an overly agreeableness. I'm working on it. I'm trying to be extremely disagreeable now, but
yeah, I would appreciate if you were totally disagreeable with me. I'd be helping you hack your narcissism. But it's you have to be reflective, and it's not just you as a person, it's who are you surrounded by that model these behaviors or support you to reinforce those behaviors, where you're constantly reflecting on yourself, the effect you have, not because you're looking to criticize yourself and look for the things that you're doing wrong, but to think about why did I react that way? Why did I interrupt that person and speak over them and dominate when they said something that I disagreed with? What could I have done differently that didn't piss them off, that didn't, tank the relationship? So if we don't do things like that, if we don't think we need to do things like that because we expect everyone to just suck it up and deal with me, and if you're upset, that's your problem. And to a degree that is true. Like, we all have to deal with our different emotions about things. But if I'm exploiting you and you're upset about it, and then I blame you for being upset about it because now I can't exploit you anymore and I'm pissed, there's a problem.
It's interesting. I think that I have a tendency to take on too much responsibility for other people's emotions, which it maybe is a type of narcissism on its own. And then I get kind of upset with people who have the opposite way of being, where I tried my best. How you take things, I'm not responsible for your emotions at all. I can sometimes feel myself frustrated with them, but I guess we want to achieve some sort of balance, because the way that I am is I know is quite unhealthy, because I am not responsible for everybody's emotions, and I can't control that, and I can't take that on. But to not care at all also feels a little bit unkind.
Yeah, there's a happy balance. It's it's a way that we communicate our thoughts and experiences of each other that I think really matter here. And if we cared about the other person, we could still not be responsible for their emotions, but we can care about their experience and be curious about it and go, I wonder what happened between us that resulted in this. Let's take a look at it, because we're both going to learn something from that, rather than focus on you and your emotions. There's something in here for both of us because we're in a relationship. We're both contributing to what happens in it. But when you're dealing with the people like we've been talking about, there's none of that. There's no possibility of that, because they're always right. They're always doing what they think is best. And if you don't see that, well, that's on you. That's just your problem. So how do you have a relationship with someone like that? And none of them last. You could see how temporary they are.
Yeah. Well, do you think, because I think both of these cases are pretty extreme, both Anna and Simon, do you think there is a pathway to redemption for either of them?
They have to want that. They have to get to a point where they start to see that their ways are not necessarily good survival strategies, because people get hurt along the way, and they have to care about other people getting hurt. And if they don't care about that, then there's no incentive for them to change what they're doing. The way they're working is just fine. They're getting what they want.
That's depressing. But you're right. Imagine you're right. Any sort of last thoughts on the Netflix shows? I mean, I have to say, through me getting to know you and talking to you a lot about narcissism, now I see it everywhere. It's like I dream of narcissists.
Well, they could be inspiring the next book, the next article, the next thing. Like, writing is really inspiring, because what we're talking about is people in suffering. They may not act like they're suffering, but why would people go about hurting other people and not believe they're doing anything wrong when everyone is saying, I'm hurt, I'm hurt, I'm hurt. There's harm, there's maybe trauma, there's something not right. There's something off about these individuals, because they're suffering, they're in pain, but they can't even take a look at it because they've created this protective shell that holds this kind of personality that is required to operate and succeed in the world. There's just no place for that part of them that's in pain. It's so compartmentalized and buried, they can't even access it. So I think that's the thing. It's about human suffering and what are the causes developmentally, but also how do they manifest in the way we relate with other people. And that's the thing that I'm, inspired by, to unpack and investigate and talk about endlessly.
I love
it's
that.
Fascinating.
It is. And I think, this addiction or a popularity, I guess, in pop culture to these kinds of characters, because we do see it. I mean, these two are con artists. There are, psychopaths, serial killers, and you see how interested people are. I mean, there's all these podcasts about, true crime. There is a lot of documentaries and movies and shows about the worst humans. Like, at least these two didn't kill anyone to our knowledge, but and yet people are fascinated. I mean, there are even women who write letters to people in prison for the most atrocious things. And I think there's something really interesting about the psychology, because it's an abnormal psychology. I can't quite understand, being taken in by someone like that. Maybe it's that, again, it's that desire to be special, because if I can get through to that, cold-blooded killer, yes, he'll kill other people, do this to them, he will never do it to me. So I think that's probably it. But
well, it's the narcissism, right? I need to be special. By me having this role in this, lost soul's life, I'm doing something significant in this world. I'm, important in their life. I can save them. That is the essence. It's like, I need to matter through exploiting, using somebody and their experience to make myself feel whole, complete, good, matter, whatever, it's not, yeah. And there's lots of descriptions as to why some women would be, intrigued by a serial killer enough to start writing and want to form a relationship with them. Where did we learn our original, where do we have our original experiences of love and caring? And what didn't go right? What went wrong there? Or what was incomplete that we're trying to get back? So I think when we're watching these things, I think we're trying to work out our stories of our own past wounds, our own past betrayals, and try to figure out, how to change the ending, or how to get out of our current situations that are disconnected from those stories, but have something in those stories that give us insight into what might be happening in our lives in certain relationships now. And I think we're just looking, I can speak from experience, I'd be unknowingly looking for that insight through these things at a safe distance, because it's happening on a TV screen. It's not happening to me. I'm not immersed in it. I can view it from a distance and watch it instead of having to be so confronted by it, by investigating me, myself, and I.
Yeah, and I think there's a tendency for people to be drawn in by some of the darkness for that reason. I mean, working it out and the curiosity, but I think we each have a level of darkness and instinctually not great tendencies in ourselves, and then we also have light, And I think every moment we make a choice which side to give into. I know for me, there's absolutely like the dark inclinations. It's there. I want to, I always say I'm evil, but I choose to be good.
Yeah.
And I think there's an element of that. And so, maybe you're living vicariously, or maybe you're trying to understand that evil that is somewhere inside you. But I think what defines a person at the end of the day is the choices they make, the choices they act out on, not necessarily just the thoughts that they have. And if you never have to make a choice, then you don't know who you are. But when you're faced with these choices, that's when you sort of discover who you are. And this way maybe it sends our mind on that journey by watching these things. And it's like, okay, could I do that? If I did that, how would I feel? How would I live with myself? And it lets us sort of play within that without having to actually do harm in the real world.
Well said. But what you've just done there showed your reflective capacity, to be curious, to wonder about these things. Whereas how many people are doing that when they're watching these things consciously? It might be back of the mind. But I think it does give us what are the possibilities of what could happen if I were to engage, if I let that part of myself free. And yeah, there's an allure. And what it asks of us to keep that restrained is, I think, I think it's good to kind of like congratulate ourselves for not starting fires all over the place that other people have to put out. It's hard work, because you said we have this inclination. We want to be free to kind of live sometimes without that responsibility, that carefree way that we could just do what we want, get what we want, and not have a care in the world. It's kind of a fantasy.
I have one last question for you. If you could have coffee, if you had to have coffee with one of these two, who would you pick and what would you ask them?
I'd pick Anna. And what I would ask her, I just don't want to ask anything because she wouldn't give me a straight up answer.
That's probably true. Why did you pick Anna?
She's just more interesting, because you never know how she'll respond to anything. So it's more of like, you could ask anything and the excitement is what she'll say in return that you probably wouldn't expect, or you wouldn't, or you could expect like a deflection, but the way it would come out, you'd be like, oh, that's interesting.
And next thing you know, you're best friends and shopping at Dior together, and and then getting bills, credit card bills months later.
And she would never sit down with me because I'm not famous. I'm a nobody.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the clothes.
The clothes and whether or not it'll be televised somewhere that she approves of.
Correct. Yeah.
So
if it's maybe an Instagram live, I think that maybe.
I don't have enough followers. I'd have to get followers first before I could picture.
Hey, it's only a matter of time.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you. So great to chat with you about this, and makes me feel like I did something with my time of watching these shows.
Is that good? Yes. Thank you. It's awesome as always.
Thanks.